Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first forum for this year. This morning we will be talking about gun violence, and we have um, Senator Waldstreicher here, and we have two volunteers from Be Smart. But before we get started, I'd like to start with a prayer. Let us lament with all those who are touched by gun violence. Let us lament the shooter's choice of violence. Let us lament laws that allow violent men easy access to guns. Let us lament our politicians' unwillingness to work for change. Let us lament with the hearts broken by loss today. Let us lament all the lives cut short today. Let us lament, O God, and then let us rise from our knees to work for change. In the name of Christ, the Prince of Peace. Amen. Today we have two sets of speakers with us. We have Senator Jeff Waldstreicher, and who is serving his second term in the Maryland House of Delegates. He also serves as the vice chair for the Justice Proceeding Committee. And from that, he has introduced a new bill. It was introduced last year, but it didn't make it through. So he is going to reintroduce it this year. And it's a Gun Violence Industry Accountability Act for 2024. And the purpose of this bill is to have a legal recourse for citizens of Maryland to address the PLACA bill, which was signed into effect through the federal government. I won't give you a lot of information about this. I think it's better if it comes from Reverend Waldstreicher, because he has the expertise in this. Once Senator is done, we will hear from Ann Connor and Jim Gallagher, who are the Be Smart volunteers here. Their Be Smart is about securing firearms, and they can give us more details also on that. So without any more delays, Senator Waldstreicher.
Well, good morning, St. John's, Norwood. Thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Jeff Waldstreicher, and it's my honor to serve as the state senator representing much of Bethesda, as well as Chevy Chase, Kensington, Wheaton, Garrett Park, and a little bit of Rockville as well. But this morning, I want to focus on the Bethesda portion of my legislative district, not just because that's where we are right now, because that's where my story starts today. So I grew up here in Montgomery County. I grew up in Silver Spring, but there wasn't much in Silver Spring back then. There weren't many places to go out to eat. There weren't many places to hang out. And so if you wanted to go someplace fancy for some reason, you'd come here to Bethesda. And so I was a freshman at Montgomery Blair High School going to homecoming for the first time. So, you know, my heart's kind of beating fast, and it was kind of a group date, and we decided to go out to Pines of Rome in Bethesda. Do you guys remember Pines of Rome? So I don't even remember whether Pines of Rome was actually fancy, but to a 14-year-old high school kid, Pines of Rome was very fancy. And I was in charge of making the reservation for my homecoming crew. And so I called Pines of Rome, tried to sound grown up. I'd like to make a reservation for 6, please. And they said something to me that you used to hear all the time, that you never hear anymore. They said, smoking or non-smoking. I was 14, I should have said smoking. It makes me sound grown up, or at least it did back then. But of course we said non-smoking. You don't get that question anymore. If I asked my kids what that meant, they would have no idea what smoking or non-smoking means. And the reason you don't hear smoking or non-smoking anymore is for one reason: industry liability. In 1960, 40% of American adults smoked cigarettes. Now that number is 13%. We didn't all of a sudden get healthier. We held the industry to account. And the same is true in lots of areas. Ask the Sackler family. Ask yourself, when was the last time I was rear-ended at 5 miles per hour and my car blew up? That doesn't happen anymore. There was a vehicle on American roads that if you hit from behind at 5 miles per hour, it would explode. And that doesn't happen anymore. And that's because of industry liability. We know that industry liability works. The problem is, in the early 2000s, the federal government passed a law that you heard earlier. It's usually referred to as PLACA. And what PLACA said is, under no circumstances can you sue gun industry manufacturers in federal court. And the federal government took their long arm and stuck it into our state and said, unless a state says otherwise, you can also not sue gun industry manufacturers in state courts. The federal government said that of us. And so what that does is it puts the onus on the states to act. And Maryland will. This year, 2024, we will pass the Gun Industry Accountability Act of 2024. This will apply to manufacturers, as the title would indicate. It would also apply to gun dealers. Now, most of our gun dealers who are heavily regulated are small business people. They are good neighbors. They have lots of rules and they follow them. But when you look at the data and track guns and crime, a lot of them go back to bad actors, bad dealers, dealers who are willing to stretch the rules, dealers who are willing to sell to straw purchasers, dealers who are willing to look the other way. And so we're not looking to punish the folks who are filing their forms with the ATF and doing everything right. We're looking to get at the bad actors. And we're doing it in a thoughtful, narrow way. When the gun industry comes to testify against this bill, they said, oh, there's going to be lawsuits everywhere and everyone's going to be able to sue. And that's not the case. We're providing power to two types of folks. The first is direct victims of gun violence or their heirs. And so only folks who are directly impacted will be able to sue. And the second is, we're going to empower the Attorney General of Maryland, and so that the state can sue for the bad behavior in this industry. Anthony Brown, I almost said Lieutenant Governor, the former Lieutenant Governor and current Attorney General of Maryland, has been very active on this issue and incredibly supportive of our efforts to pass this bill this year. And it will empower his office to hold this industry accountable, along with the attorneys general from states that have already passed this bill. Now, I always prefer moving fast and prefer being bold and being aggressive. And I wish we were among the first states to pass this bill. But there are some advantages to going a little bit later. So 8 states have passed this legislation already. We would be the 9th. And the great thing about going kind of in the middle of the pack here is we can learn the lessons of other states. We don't legislate in ideas, we legislate in text. And other states, as they have gone through this process, have vetted and refined the text of this legislation so that we know we can get it in a way that works. We know that we can get it in a place that might have bipartisan support. We know we can get it in a place where the governor will sign it. And that makes my job in the upcoming legislative session much easier. I cannot do this alone. That's why I'm here today. And my sense is that's why you're here today. I need your help. For those of you I represent, please join me in Annapolis. When we have a hearing on this bill, I will get you the date. For those of you in other legislative districts, please contact your state delegates and your state senator to support this important bill. And for those of you who have friends in parts of the state that might be more purple, as we say, please contact them to contact their representative, folks in Harford County and Howard County and Carroll County and Anne Arundel County. A lot of gun issues are deeply partisan, and there's certain votes we're never going to get. But the tort system actually is something that works, and we've seen that as we described earlier. And a lot of folks who might not consider supporting gun control bills will support this because to them, providing immunity for an entire industry, regardless of what that industry is anathema to them. And so we're looking for their support as well. This builds on what we have already done in Annapolis when it comes to gun violence. And I want to say thank you to those in the red shirts, to those not in the red shirts today, for all you've done to allow us to be successful in Annapolis. Maryland is one of the strongest states already when it comes to cracking down on gun violence. And let me just tell you briefly where we are in that process. In 2013, after Sandy Hook, many of you saw a push at the federal level to finally say, this is the time to do something. And of course, much to our dismay, that didn't happen. And in many states, nothing happened either. But in Maryland, we made great progress. Under the leadership of then Senator Jamie Raskin, we passed the Firearms Safety Act of 2013. That bans automatic firearms, semi-automatic firearms, AR-15s, and military-style weapons. And we've built on that. A couple years later, we banned ghost guns. Many of you remember Senator Susan Lee, who represented Bethesda and was an incredible leader on that. And ghost guns are now banned in Maryland. And last year, after the terrible decision in the Bruin case coming down from the Supreme Court, including authored by some of our neighbors here in Bethesda and Chevy Chase, Maryland was forced to act. So the Bruin case said the default will be you can take guns in public spaces anywhere, anytime, unless a state specifically marks out certain sensitive places where that is not allowed. What's funny is that in that opinion, this will not shock you, the courts gave a couple examples of sensitive places. The first one they listed, of course, was courthouses. And so we took that, and last year we passed a bill called Senate Bill 1. I was fortunate to be the sponsor of that legislation. And what it does is say you can't carry weapons openly in anywhere in Maryland, open carry, and you can't carry weapons anywhere that is a sensitive place. Schools, churches, establishments that serve alcohol, preschools, playgrounds, and the like. And so much of that bill has already been upheld, and that will litigate through, and I am confident that it will move forward. And so that's where we are. This industry liability piece is likely to be one of, I mean, you know, the work of justice is never done. This church knows that better than most. But this will be likely one of the last substantial pieces of gun control, really to complete the puzzle of gun violence prevention here in Maryland. Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me today. Thank you for being with us in Annapolis year after year. And thank you for the spiritual guidance that you provide to me, to others in our community that inspires us to continue this work. Really appreciate your having me.
Now, before we allow him to take his seat, do we have any questions? Oh.
So I just want to know, given the number of steps that have been taken, has the gun violence, have the numbers gone down at all? What can you tell from that? I know it's not perfect, but what can you say about what has been the effect of this cumulative step-by-step approach?
That's a great question. So the answer is yes, the numbers are going down. We are seeing fewer and fewer ghost guns on our street. Murders are down 20% in Baltimore City. And we've seen a drop in crime, especially juvenile crimes with guns here in Montgomery County over the past year. This will iterate over time, and we'll see increasing numbers going down as the law kind of works its way through, and as those who continue to violate the law are held accountable in our court. So we are going in the right direction. Now, I am focused on structure. I've always believed, I'm not an appropriator at heart. I don't usually say that out loud, but I believe that changing the structure of our laws and the structure of our society is the best way to make change and reduce gun violence. But that doesn't mean that appropriations aren't part of the solution here. They definitely are. And so that means soup to nuts. That means appropriations when it comes to hunger. That means appropriation when it comes to healthcare. It means appropriation when it comes to mental health, especially. And on gun violence, it also means appropriations for gun violence interrupters. This is especially prominent in cities like Baltimore and in Prince George's County, where gun violence is high, where there are a number of returning citizens coming in from coming back into society from incarceration. So gun violence interrupters are people whose profession it is to get involved in their community, get close to people who are likely to be either perpetrators or victims of gun violence. Oftentimes, those are the same people. And because oftentimes the violence interrupters have a history as themselves being victims or perpetrators of gun violence, they are trusted voices on our street. And it's an incredible program. You may have heard of ROCA or Safe Streets. These are programs that are not perfect, but are doing great work in our community to reduce gun violence. And that's part of the solution as well.
Hi, my name's Dylan Grinham. I'm a public high school teacher in Montgomery County, and we've already had 3 loaded guns at our school this year. And the county policy is to reduce suspensions. So my concern is enforcement. The only thing we have catching these guns is other students reporting students to administration. And the only tool at administration's discretion is suspension with a recommendation for expulsion. Because the county wants us to reduce suspensions and expulsions, these students are never expelled and they're only sometimes suspended. And there is no program for interruption of gun violence. So it's just a matter of time before a student, and I'm afraid to go to work every day. It's just a matter of time before a student brings a loaded gun to our schools and another student doesn't report them. They don't want to put in metal detectors because that makes schools look like prisons. But at the same time, every day, staff and students are in danger in our public high schools. And I would love to know what is going to be done for administration and students in our public high schools so that we don't have fear. I'm on a lockdown at least once a month. And my own child who goes to a public high school, I teach in a minority school. I actually love my students, but I'm afraid at work. And then my child who goes to a majority white school is probably in lockdown once a quarter.
Well, I'm so sorry you're going through this. And it's tough. I grew up in MCPS and we had none of this. My kids are now in MCPS. They're in middle school and they have had lockdowns in middle school. We need to find the right balance here. And this is, I'm going to kind of touch on something that's a little controversial. I don't mind expressing my very clear opinion on this. When there's a firearm in school, police need to be involved. I don't believe that every school should have a contingent of police. I think the school to prison pipeline is a real thing. And I think we need to be thoughtful about when we involve police in disciplinary issues that should be handled by the school. But there is a line, and that line must be clear. And my understanding is that at some point that line was clear, that there's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the school system and the police that indicates what's handled internally and what's handled externally. My view is if there is a firearm, the police must be called. And we saw that in Virginia. If you recall, there was an odd but very serious case where a 6-year-old in Virginia brought a firearm to school. And that sounded so incredible to the administrators that the teacher told that they didn't act on it that day. And later, the 6-year-old shot that very teacher, and she is scarred for life. And as you might imagine, suing that school system for failure to act. And so if we are not calling the police when there are firearms in our schools, there is something wrong. Does that mean that the kids should go to jail for the rest of their lives? Of course not. Does that mean the kids should be in our system that allows for mental health services and a path towards restoration? Absolutely. I don't know how many of you are BCC parents, but there was a news article that the day BCC came back into session after the new year, a couple weeks ago, there was a brawl, another brawl at BCC, and there were some videos going around in social media. Turns out the kid who initiated that brawl had been expelled from 4 other high schools and was at BCC, and he's just getting cycled through. Now that's dangerous for the other kids, and I wouldn't want my kid going to school with that kid. But that's not even the view everyone should take. Even if you're empathetic with that child, that's not good for him either. That's not services. That's not justice. That's doing exactly what you described, which is trying to avoid some kind of public statistic that you don't want. People should feel safe in their homes. People should feel safe at church. People should feel safe in their communities. But of all places that people should feel safe, teachers and students must feel safe in our schools. So thank you for your question.
Really appreciate your comments this morning. Where does Maryland stand with red flag laws? And what do you know about that? And is there legislation pending on that?
So that's a great question. So Maryland has passed, and I see so many faces of the people who made that happen, a red flag law, which is sometimes you hear it referred to as ERPO, Emergency Response Protective Order. And it has worked very well in Maryland and fortunately prevented a lot of death and violence. These things take time to work their way through because ultimately red flag laws, while they can be initiated by the police, are oftentimes initiated by family members, by parents, by siblings, by loved ones who say, something's not right here. Something might happen and I need to act before it does to save a life, perhaps even to save my own life. So as more and more people learn about this tool in our toolbox, I think you'll see an even greater impact. There are some states that you've probably heard about. I think Illinois was one where only the police can initiate ERPO. And so people were falling through the cracks because it required someone to essentially tell the police and then the police to believe that person and follow through. In Maryland, anyone can initiate an ERPO, and it is usually family members who do so. That's a good thing.
Morning, Senator. Thank you for being here and thanks for your work on this issue. Was just wondering if, Leo Munoz, I think I'm pretty sure we're Senate District 18. Does your legislation impact some of these companies that go out and destroy guns? I know you mentioned ghost guns, and some of these companies destroy, of course, they'll destroy the barrel, but then the other components often get sold on the black market and are used to make ghost guns and things like that. And just wondered if you could please address that issue.
Yeah, that's a good question. So many of you may have seen an article a few weeks ago that police departments are hiring companies to destroy weapons that are turned in or that are used in crimes, and that those companies, in fact, aren't destroying the weapons. They're taking the weapons apart and selling portions of those weapons. And that was the first I learned of it. I didn't know that was happening. So the answer to your question is, I don't know if our new law will apply to them. I'd like it to, and we may craft an amendment to do so because that was news to all of us. Thank you again. I appreciate your having me.
Okay, up next, we have our 2 volunteers from Be Smart. It's Ann Connor and Jim Gallagher. Please welcome them.
Hello, my name is Ann Connor. I'm a volunteer with Be Smart, which is a gun safety and securing program. Can you hear me now? Feel like I'm in a Verizon commercial. My name's Ann Connor. I'm a volunteer with the Be Smart program. Thank you, first of all, for joining us here today so that you can learn our message and share our message. I am a recently retired nurse of 50 years. I'm a mother and a new grandmother. And in my nursing career and my parenting career, I've had the opportunity to see the effect that gun violence has on children, particularly unintentional gun violence. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And again, thank you for joining us to hear our message.
Hi, my name is Jim Gallagher, and I retired from 45 years in law enforcement. And part of that was as a detective in Brooklyn with the district attorney's office, and transitioned on to the Park Police down here in DC, and then eventually U.S. Secret Service for 25 years. And post-retirement job, I worked, oversaw the National Park Service law enforcement. So you've got serious crimes, you've got bears, it's a combination of, but anyway, so I'm involved because especially my time in Brooklyn, I saw victims of crime, and it really, even then, there was no schools and empathy and all that. I got it back then. And my last assignment was overseeing the Victims Witness Program with the Park Service. So I really got a bit of that. So the only thing I ask, this is my first presentation, so be kind. Well, we're in a church, you better be kind.
Okay, and thank you to Jan, who is our slide advancer. You can go ahead and advance, please. Okay, we are here today to tell you about Be Smart, a program to bring together all adults concerned about kids, guns, and safety.
So we all want kids to grow up happy and healthy. We each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, families, and communities, including whether or not to have a gun in our home. If we can prevent even one child's gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. And we're not here to talk about laws or policies, so let's set those aside. What's your rehearsal? Oh, yeah.
Okay, so firearms are the leading cause of death for children in the US. It is a heartbreaking fact that that is the case. This is a public health crisis. More than 1,800 children under the age of 18 are killed with guns every year, an average of 5 children every day. When children are killed with guns, the majority of those deaths, 54%, are homicides. That's 1,000 children per year. Additionally, nearly 700 children die by firearm suicide each year, and 100 are unintentionally shot and killed. We're here today to talk about how we can prevent tragedies like that.
Okay, I'll start. So a shocking 4.6 million children in the US live in a household with at least one loaded, unlocked gun. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make national headlines, almost all child unintentional shootings deaths occur in the home. And the Secret Service found that 3/4 of the school shooters acquired their firearms from the home of a parent or a close relative. Just a side note, I was part of that study. It was quite a while ago. So listen, I know this is an emotional issue and we may come from different walks of life. Many of you may be parents, some of you may be gun owners, and some of you may not. Some of you may have had a personal experience with guns, and some of you may have even been impacted by gun violence. We believe that most gun owners want to be responsible gun owners. So we're here to talk about what all of us can do, gun owners, non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure children and teens do not have unsupervised access to guns.
In incidents of gunfire on school grounds, up to 76%. Can you go back for one moment? Thanks. Sure. Up to 76% of shooters under the age of 18 obtained the gun or guns that they used from their home or the home of relatives or friends. This goes to the question that we just had from the audience. And next slide now, please. Thank you. On this slide, you'll see just a few headlines from stories from our local area, although we do know there are many more that go unreported. And you may have read about these in the paper. In Baltimore in February, a child unintentionally shot and wounded their friend, a 14-year-old girl in a home. The child was playing with a loaded gun before it discharged. It is not yet clear who the gun belongs to or how the child gained access to it. In Virginia, in 2023, a 7-year-old boy unintentionally shot and wounded himself in a home. His 35-year-old father was charged with felony child neglect and allowing children access to firearms. And I'm going to take a moment now to note that last year, we did pass in Maryland Jalen's Law, which some of you may have heard about. Jalen Willie was a 16-year-old high school girl in Southern Maryland. 17-year-old male classmate went to his home, got the unsecured loaded weapon from his home, came to school, shot and killed Jalen. Took us 5 years with a lot of help from our representatives and senators to pass this law. It is in the broad scope of what we call child access prevention. There are studies showing that child access prevention CAP laws that have been passed around the country do in fact reduce the incidence of unintentional shooting. With this law, the parent or individual who knew or should have known that there was an unsecured weapon in the home is liable to legal processing, to potentially losing their license to own a firearm, and to financial fines as well. So we are very happy that we have Jalen's Law, and her mother campaigned for this all 5 years with all her heart, knowing that she was helping to hopefully make it possible that no other family goes through this. So simply be aware that the law does exist. Next
Yep,
slide.
you got it. We can all take action in our homes and our communities to keep our kids safe. So even if you don't have a gun in your home, or if you do and you know that you're already practicing secure gun storage, what can you do right now? Together we can learn to be smart.
So SMART is an acronym, and we can advance the slide. And we do have plenty of cards. We hope you'll take English on one side, Spanish on the other. Please take them, use them. After you've read and learned the message of our acronym, take them to public libraries, pass them on to friends, leave them in restaurants, leave them in restrooms. Just get the word out. Recycle this message. And next slide. Starting with S, secure guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun. One study found that the majority of children in gun-owning households know where the gun is stored. Store guns locked up and inaccessible to kids. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun. So what do I mean by securing guns? A gun should always be stored securely, which means they are inaccessible to kids, and children should never be in the presence of unsecured guns. We do have information at our table outside about gun locks and secure storage that we encourage you to take a look at that as well. And next.
Okay, We know that you may have specific questions about what secure storage looks like. So we're here with some examples. We also have a handout that you can download at besmartforkids.org/resources. Contrary to popular belief, locking up guns does not prevent owners from readily accessing their guns. There is a common myth that storage devices negate the self-defense purpose of owning a gun by putting time-consuming barriers between the gun owner and their means of self-defense. The reality is that there are many affordable options for secure gun storage that provides owners with access to guns in a matter of seconds while still preventing access by children and people at risk and increased risk of harming themselves or others. Further, it is possible that unsecured guns may actually increase the likelihood of crime and violence through an increased risk of gun theft. Locking up guns will help to reduce the risk of firearm suicide, unintentional firearm injury, and also prevent firearm theft. Did you know that hundreds of thousands of guns are stolen every year? It's important to also remember to lock up your guns in cars too. More than half of stolen guns are taken from cars. Just putting your gun under the seat or in a glove box compartment wouldn't be considered secure storage. There are called gun lock boxes available for purchases at most retail and sporting goods stores. That's it, right? So just as a side note here, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in law enforcement for 45 years. The only 4 years I didn't carry a gun was when I was a Secret Service attaché in London. Somebody's got it. And anyway, so that was the only time I didn't carry a gun. And I've had a lockbox. It's a combination lock. I had it as soon as my daughter was born. I had it locked before, but now this is a box that's secured into a closet close to where I need it. Bing, bing, you have it if you need it, but it's secure. And if you have any questions after that, I'm happy to answer, but I really strongly endorse these locks.
And one addendum, there are now biometric safes that are available that are affordable. I will encourage you, if you're looking at any product, including gun safes and biometric safes, do go to Consumer Product Safety Commission website to check, because I did read a couple of the biometric safes that came out in 2022 actually had flammability issues. So always check the product that you're buying. That's another step in public health and safety. And next slide, please. The next letter, M, is for model responsible behavior. Every law-abiding adult has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home, but you cannot rely on curious kids not to find a gun. Kids know where their parents store their guns, and more than 1/3 reported handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. Nearly 1/4 of parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in their house. It is always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns, not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. Talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that's a precaution, not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach or play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't have the opportunity to access guns. That being said, you can't control the environment that your child is in all the time. So you should teach them not to touch a gun if they come across one, real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of a dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it is your responsibility to do everything you can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. We do also have a handout on best practices for talking to children and teens about guns. Our website, besmartforkids.org, is free. We have PSAs, we have information handouts. Send it to everybody on your email list, because you don't know whose life you're going to impact for the better. And next slide, thank you.
As we mentioned, there's approximately 4.6 million U.S. children living in households with at least one loaded unlocked gun. That's why we need to ask about firearms in our homes. On the homes your child visits, the A in Be Smart. From the parents and caretakers in the room, what are some things you ask about before allowing your child to go to a friend's or another home? And then potential allergies, these are things you'd ask. Pools on the property, car seats for kids, that kind of stuff. And in my experience, I was the cop on the block kind of a guy. And so I made sure that when my daughter's friends came over, that they knew that they obviously knew I had a firearm, but they knew it was secure. And that was a long time ago. So anyway, should we ask for anything?
Just to give a couple of examples, and the things that Jim mentioned, we always check about allergens, pets, helmets for bike safety, et cetera. And when our children are going to someone's home or grandchildren, or we're having people over, we need to make this part of the routine public health safety conversation. Just like you'd say, my son has peanut butter allergy, please don't give them peanut butter. Oh, by the way, I want you to know that all our hunting rifles are in a safe that's locked in the garage. The children will not be near it. We need to start making this part of our everyday conversation. So think about that when your family members are going somewhere else, to confirm that you know they're going to an environment that's safe for them. And if you're uncomfortable with that, and we've had that come from a lot of people in audience, oh, it's too awkward to ask my friend, you know, hey, can you lock up your gun, or do you have guns? Then put it in the positive way and saying that, could you do me a favor? I would feel so much more comfortable if I could know that any weapons you have in the home are secured. It really matters to me. So make it a personal ask. It's not judgmental. And it's also not putting the burden on the other person to feel hostile, or why are you asking me, or this is an intrusive question. And ultimately think that what could be more awkward than asking would be an awkward conversation, is finding out that your child was injured in someone's home, or have someone injured in your home if you didn't do your part to secure any weapons. So some people have said it's helpful for them to send a text first and say, oh, by the way, in the text, please secure any weapons when my child comes over for the prom party. Whatever means of communication works, it's helpful, really, I think, to personalize it and say, you're helping me to be comfortable with this. And then if the person on the other end you're communicating with is hostile or doesn't want to consider it, that gives you pause. Do you want your child going to somewhere where the person doesn't want to have the question brought up at all? So this is on us. Your voice is free. Your communication is free. Be Smart is not a club. It's not a membership. You don't have a secret handshake, and we don't ask for money. All you have to do is bring up this conversation and use your voice. And next slide, please. You. Yeah.
Sleep
And
at the
next
switch
slide,
there.
next slide after that. Thank you.
Yeah, did both of them? Yep. Okay. Asking about guns in the home should be as natural. What's that? What they got there? That's why she's boss. There we are. Thank you. All righty. So take it from the top, Jim. I got it. Okay. Let's talk about recognizing the role of guns in suicide, the R. Access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death. As our children get older, you may need to consider taking another look at your storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock, you may want to think about getting a gun safe. And that's what happened to me. Once my daughter was born, I went from a gun lock to a gun safe. We all know how curious children can be, so as they get older and more resourceful, you need to act accordingly. Also, if you know your loved one is in distress, you might want to consider temporarily removing a gun from the home. Why would you want to do that? It's important to consider that firearm suicide is uniquely lethal. 90% of suicide attempts using a gun end in death, and that half of suicides in the United States are gun suicides. 70% of people who survive a suicide attempt will never attempt suicide again. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they use a gun. In fact, 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death, a much higher fatality rate than any other means of self-harm. This contributes to the fact that 42% of children's suicides involve a gun. So if you consider temporarily remove a gun from the home, how do you go about that and where can you bring it? Maryland is one of 19 states, along with the District of Columbia, that have a place and extreme risk protection orders, ERPO, or red flag law, which the senator spoke about also. This law enables you to petition your local law enforcement agency to remove the guns from the home of a loved one if you're concerned that the person may pose a risk to self or someone else. There is due process. It requires a court order to sign by a judge, and only law enforcement can remove the gun. While the order is in place, the person is prohibited from buying a gun. If the danger is resolved, the person can petition to have his or her guns returned. We also provide you with a safe storage map that lists all the places in Maryland where you can safely store guns. That's on the table. I think. Yeah. Yep. And that'll be outside on the table there. Or you could temporarily store your guns in the home of a friend or a family member. To manage risk for a friend or a family member, you should lock any guns that you transfer and not provide the key or the code. Depending on how the law in your state works, and we know how it works here, thanks to the senator, the person agreeing to store your guns may first need to get a background check as a gun dealer or through law enforcement.
And we do have at our table outside copies of the ERPO red flag law. They are available online, but please do take them. And again, once you've had them in your and read them and understand them, if you don't feel the need to use it, pass it on to somebody else, leave it at the library, recycle this important information. And next slide. Okay. A survey of high school students found that 20% had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. And one study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report having easy access to the guns in their homes. As we discussed earlier, research has shown that secure firearm storage is associated with a decreased risk of child firearm suicide. And we do have information about that at our table as well. And next slide.
Right, would they have access to this as well?
No.
Okay. All right, here are some important resources to write down and take a picture of. Well, I got the slide here. You can take a picture of it later if you want. Take a picture in case you or someone you care about needs help. And it's all, I mean, the suicides in the highest level of society, it's just everywhere. And there's keys to look out for. And part of my job as a Secret Service was when you interview someone who threatens the president or vice president, whoever, is this sort of word. We had a lot of training in analyzing mental health issues. Some signs to look out for when concerned that a loved one may be suicidal is prolonged sadness and depression, changes in mood or behavior, hopelessness, sleeping too much or too little, withdrawing isolation, aggression or agitation, increased alcohol or drug use, and talking about killing themselves. We have handout materials, more information about how to get help if you do recognize these signs or other warning signs, and it includes the suicide prevention hotline. There's a handout we're going to have. Additionally, if you're a survivor of gun violence, we have resources available at momentsthatsurvive.org/resources, and every town support funds and survivors of gun violence. So this will all be available. Thank you.
And next slide. And the last letter in our acronym is T, tell, the power of being smart. And this is really the most effective part of our acronym is your voice. You need to talk about this. We need to make this again part of our common culture. We are trying to overcome the culture of fear that has been put forth for the past many years by a lot of groups. And we are trying to build a culture of public safety and health. And how do we do that? Culture means we talk to each other, we communicate. So use everything at your disposal to do so. We are available for coffees and houses, PTAs, school fairs, public festivals. We will go anywhere and give out our material and hand it out. You will see outside what we do have available. Feel free to contact us. At the end of this slide, there is the name of our state coordinator and her contact information to reach out. Workplaces, churches, homes, hospitals, nursing homes, there's nowhere that we haven't gone to and that nowhere that we won't go to. And then our last slide, we're going to go through our acronym again.
Be smart, secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. Model responsible behavior around guns. Ask about unsecured guns in other homes. Recognize the role of guns in suicide. Tell your peers to be smart. If you'd like to become involved in Be Smart, we have a group in all of the local Moms Demand Action local groups, or you can contact your state co-lead, Debbie Stein. And her contact information is on the slide. And you can also text SMART 64433. And that's it.
And that is our slide presentation. If there's, we have very limited time. If anybody has quick questions, you could ask now, or we can meet you outside afterwards. Thank you so much for your attention.
Please hold your questions and meet them outside because we're running a little bit late. And Margaret, you have the floor.
Thank you, Diana. Thanks for moderating our forum. Thanks to everyone who's here. Thank you all who are here in person in the parish hall. Thank you if you're joining us by Zoom. Thank you, Anne and Jim, for sharing the Be Smart campaign. It's so important. It's critically important to prevent children's access to guns. It educates firearm owners. It encourages them. It increases awareness of the danger and encourages them to lock their firearms. So it's strictly voluntary. But we also need laws to drive behavior. As they mentioned, as Jim and Ann mentioned, after 5 years, finally we got Jay Lynn's law passed. So that law requires Marylanders to secure their firearms, preventing access from children under 18. Thank you, Senator Waldstreicher, for introducing. I know you're shortly going to introduce. Thank you for everything you've done. Accountability is now on the agenda. Thank you for your support in getting Jay Lynn's law passed. We need legal changes, so please come with us to Advocacy Day. As I said earlier, you don't have to be a mom to join Moms Demand Action on Advocacy Day. You don't have to be female. You don't have to be a grandparent. Anyone can come with us. Many men do come to Advocacy Day, people of all genders. Help us get the accountability passed. And if you really can't take that one day, it's only one day. So if there's one thing you can do to take that one day and come with us, that's the top priority. If you can't, then you can advocate for passage of the accountability bill from home by signing up for my gun violence email list. I see a few people that aren't yet on my list here, and I'm going to have a sign up right outside. So we'll have further conversation and more questions. We need to be out of here at 11, but please come talk to us in the lobby. In the lobby, talk to us about Advocacy Day, talk to me, talk to Jan McNamara, talk to Clara Lovett, who's right here. And when you're in the lobby, talk to Ann and Jim and find out about how you can get involved in the Be Smart campaign and how you can help keep all kids safe from guns. And I'm going to turn it back to Diana.
And I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing this session with us. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Just one quick thing. If you are thinking of coming to Advocacy Day, which is Tuesday, January 30th, we have the flyers out there. Montgomery County, most of you live in, but not everyone, I realize, is very much on the side of this type of legislation. So those meetings are going to be super friendly, super easy. They're happy to see us, but it's important to them to see us in the halls, but there's going to be very pleasant interaction. So just wanted to make that pitch there. Thank you so much.